Hello and welcome to the 100 Podcast. I'm Dan, your mountain man, and today I am talking about my very first off-the-cuff reactions to Season 5, Episode 10, The Warrior's Will. And I was very confused by this title for a while because I thought there should be an apostrophe, some possessiveness, but then they said in the episode, I was like, oh, okay, that's good grammar. Therefore, the episode gets an A, because it's good grammar. This was a weird episode. It was, not what I expected. It was, I in some ways was a little let down that we didn't get like the full-on fight to the death, blah, blah, blah. But Monty coming in was great. I love Monty. He like tried to save the day and he kind of did. And then Octavia came and she was just like, I kill all the plants and I'm evil plant killer. And that was upsetting. So honestly, I don't know what I think about this episode. I really enjoyed watching it, but at the same time, I feel like they took Octavia like really down crazy town this episode and didn't really explain why. And I know next week is the dark year and we'll get more of her backstory, but I'm not quite sure why this was the thing that like really turned her over the top. And I felt like last week I did this reaction video and I got a lot of interesting comments from people that were like pro Octavia. We're like, Octavia hasn't gone too far yet. They understand where she's coming from. She's making some smart, just tough choices. And they like made some interesting points. And I was like, yeah, okay, Octavia, I can see where they're coming from. I can see why she made the choices she made. And it's not like she's like evil. They're just really morally dubious maybe. But this episode, they really didn't back up her point of view at all, especially in that they brought in the whole thing of Monty with the algae and that there was an alternative solution, and he wasn't really explaining what her reasoning was. Like, maybe you could reason as like, she's like, oh, I don't think this will work in the long term. We need to take Dioza's land. I can't surrender because Dioza wouldn't actually let me surrender, all those things. But she doesn't say any of that. And so the episode like really firmly pushes you into the thought process that he just has snapped with reality, especially when she literally lights all the plants on fire. And it's just like, okay, he is so short-sighted that he's willing to do absolutely anything. And at once I was like, this is a great episode for her because they were showing so much nuance of her not wanting to kill Bellamy. And I thought this was probably the best performance by this actress that I think we've seen all series maybe. But it was just a bit muddled for me. And maybe on rewatch I'll feel differently. Maybe after seeing The Dark Year I'll feel differently. I'd love to hear what you guys think. But yeah, as far as Octavia goes, it's a little bit like, Bellamy I thought gave a great performance here. All of his stuff I thought he explained well. His reasoning made sense. Maddie and Clark were an interesting pairing here as far as Clark being very rough with Maddie was a little uncomfortable, but like, at least I was happy to hear that she actually had a plan. She didn't just run away. She had a plan of how to deal with Dioza. And I like seeing Maddie in this role a little bit more, and now she has the commanders in her head. That said, it's still the weird issue of Lexa being in there, especially now that we're seeing more of she's just like getting memories of them right before they die. And it's like, well, we know what happened to Lexa right before she died. And that's uncomfortable and weird. But yeah, oh god. So that's an interesting dynamic. Meanwhile, we have all the drug stuff with Vincent and Abby. I think that the lighting department and the makeup department did a phenomenal job this week. I think they did a great job at showing Abby and her sort of gauntness, and actually Blood Reina and her sort of gauntness. They both had the sort of skeletal, frightening. There's like a lot of horror in this episode, and I think that worked really well, and the lighting worked great, and especially in the bunker. But Abby, I mean, they kind of made her more sympathetic here to me, but at the same time, it's just like, oh, they're just going so intense with it. I have to rewatch that too to really know how I feel about it. Vincent was disturbing. A lot of things about this episode were pretty disturbing. I'm glad to see that Abby isn't like dead because Clark not really actually interacting with Abby before she died would have been pretty stupid. So that's good. I'm pretty shocked that we didn't get an actual character death this episode. I was so sure that like at least Gaia would be killed. So in a lot of ways that was surprising, and that was the good shock. It's like when you assume someone's gonna die and no one does because Monty's a badass. That's pretty great. So I did enjoy that ultimately. One big thing that I do want to say about this episode is sort of the content. I've been talking about how sort of scary and horrific it is. We had this scene where Octavia picks up the shattered glass and it looks like she's gonna slit her wrists and or maybe just cut herself, and of course she does it ultimately to do like the blood rain face, and that was like freaky and cool. But the actual cutting thing, you know, was very reminiscent of some of the stuff that I thought was pretty disturbing back in season 3 with Raven and her with the chip having to cut herself. And back then, and still now, I'm like, I feel like these are the kind of things that CW needs trigger warnings for. I feel like you're showing the show to a young, impressionable teenage audience. I know it's not the only audience, but that is like a lot of the demographic. And you should, and even if she didn't actually slit her wrists ultimately, you shouldn't just be showing someone almost slitting their wrists and not giving any sort of content warning of any substance. I'm not a fan of that. I think that that's going too far. And I don't know why shows like this can get away with it, but other shows can't. So that's just my 2 cents on that topic. I don't know if it bothers anybody else. And I know obviously this is a show that is very violent all the time, and you kind of need to know that going in, but I feel like this is a very particular thing that, in my opinion, deserves some sort of warning. And I'm not gonna, you know, you can debate about how best to do that kind of warning, whether it should be something that's just like on their website or whatever, or at the beginning of the episode, how specific they need to get. But I feel like it's a time that people take CW seriously enough to realize that they actually have pretty intense violence and pretty intense things happening on the channel. And maybe there should be something legitimate at the beginning of episodes, especially with shows like this. That's just how I feel. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting episode. I'm excited to watch it again and do our full podcast on it, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. We got great feedback last week, and I'd love to keep that conversation going. So if you want to leave a comment down below, I'll include it in our audio podcast coming in a few days, or you can email us at the100pod@gmail.com. You can leave us a contact form over the100podcast.com, or you can tweet us at the100podcast. And, you know, check down below in the description or in the comments, and I'll let you guys know when the podcast will be coming this week. Thank you guys so much for watching, and maybe meet again.